People think that fertility is so linear and decreases with age, and age is just one part of the story. It's not everything.
So Ronit and Vida, you two are making such a big impact in this community. Locally, I know for sure because I'm part of the local community, but I hope that the news of WeNatal, the prenatal for him and her, is getting out there on a bigger scale.
Definitely has. It's exciting. We're about to hit our 2-year birthday, and we're humbled by the size and scale that we are able to help people. And it's grown across the nation. It's gone global. It's very exciting.
That's so cool. Ronit, you look like you have
I was
something.
going to say everything from the testimonials that we get from people to the DMs and text messages of positive pregnancy tests or pictures of babies. It's been so amazing to be able to help people on the individual level, but also from a macro level. We're seeing the media talk about fertility in a different way, and we're seeing a huge shift, and men are starting to be part of the conversation and part of the narrative. And back when we incepted WeNatal, men were not part of the equation.
No, you got my attention. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta know those two because they are so left out.
Yeah, we know.
We agree.
So behind me is this collage, which I made in 2010 or 2011 when I had a small space inside California Fertility Partners. And I was supposed to do consultations, but I don't think the public was quite ready for that. And I just shut it down and I launched Seed as an online course. But this is like what the three of us are doing with our brand, Seed Fertility and WeNatal. Bringing awareness, talking about it in a way that's less frightening and less shameful, right? You doing the Instagram lives and the two of you posting these videos that show behind the scenes and life, right? Instead of the beautiful colors and the bellies and when it's already worked, you're saying like, hey, listen up. Let's bring some dramatic statistics into the light so that we can shift it. I'm just so curious, what goes on behind your mind in the planning of these things? Because you both have a background in marketing, but then you have a personal story. But tell me when you're thinking, I think the community needs to hear X, Y, or Z. How does that process get started?
Yeah, well, when we launched WeNatal, we were sharing the information that we wished that we had when we were struggling with fertility. And the truth is initially we weren't necessarily sharing our personal story, and our story wasn't necessarily in the forefront of the narrative. But one day we shared about our miscarriage on social, and we shared about, and we can get into that.
Yeah, because I'm curious. I want to know if you two miscarried around the same time.
We did.
Okay.
It was about a week apart, but I had previously had one before. So it was my second and her first.
Okay.
And we shared a reel on just how we were dismissed by just the medical system after we had a miscarriage. And we shared how we weren't empowered and how we felt deflated. And when we shared that reel went viral. And our big aha from that was like, oh my God, like we need to put out more of our personal story as much as we're behind the scenes type of people. And I'm not the type of person who's like posting every meal I eat or every smoothie I drink. But the reaction from the community was so positive that we started to share more about our experience and what we did and how we did find so much information and people and created a community around us with people like you that allowed us to then have our next babies. Both of us had healthy babies after our loss. And so going back to your question about the content creation, it's truly sharing about our journey in order to empower people, because our journey ended up with a big positive.
Yeah.
Big positive.
So you think, okay, they need to know about the role of the emotions, right? That's the thing, the shame factor, the shame element of this. That's why it wasn't talked about, because they were comparing to their friends. Their friends seemingly didn't struggle. But then there's people like me in the community who know, oh God, did they struggle? And if you knew the extent, but they're not talking about it. And there's less and less, fewer and fewer people back then that were coming out. But it was like, this is happening. This is life. This is the way that humans are evolving. To be more reliant on technology is only one angle. Here's IVF. And so then it's a medical procedure. You can throw money at it. You can have doctors do it. But the inner work and the nutritional component, we've got so much work to do on both of those two areas, right? Like the standard American diet. We live in LA. You girls are exposed to so much healthy food, but this is Los Angeles and it's unusual. The rest of the country is not able to access foods. And as I was learning on your podcast, choline being in such a small amount in our diet that we really need to supplement.
Yeah.
And that's just one of many nutrients.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even though we're in LA and we're in the forefront of wellness, there is so much education that still needs to be had, especially with OBGYNs, especially with fertility doctors that are amazing. We have so many friends that are fertility doctors now that we've been in this business for a few years, and they're definitely angels and they do miracle work. But also there's a component that is not being taught in med school, which is the nutrition component, which is the mind-body connection. I do think, the acupuncture connection and how that can help support fertility. And I think more and more doctors are coming on board and learning, but I think that there's still a lot more work that we need to do to share this important information.
Right. And there's one other thing that was probably the biggest aha outside of, we kind of already knew nutrition played in this space, but we were completely thinking we were doing everything right and essentially ignoring our husbands, right? So that was the biggest aha, that here we are in 2020. It feels like we're so progressed in so many ways, and yet societal history has placed the burden of fertility solely on women. And that for me was the biggest wake up call of this needs to change. The narrative needs to change. We need to help people not feel the guilt and shame and so alone in the journey. Because I know after my first loss, I had all those feelings, literally went into a postpartum thinking about everything I did and essentially only blaming myself for the loss. And so...
Well, in the acupuncture community, we refer to the male patients, the husbands, as a unicorn Pegasus, because we almost never see him. But we see the women week after week, sometimes twice a week. But I will tell you, when both partners come in for care, knock on wood, consistently, those couples, they always get their kid. Because it's stress reduction. It's an opportunity for him to be cared for. As we've talked in the panels with Dr. Paul Turek, fertility as a biomarker for men's health. When we are infertile or subfertile, it's because there's already other problems going on.
Exactly.
Cardiovascular, emotionally, metabolism, sugar,
insulin resistance,
exactly.
All of the things. I know. I was... when Dr. Paul Turek shared, I watched him on a panel here at Well People, that IVF is probably the worst thing that happened to men's health. I stood in my tracks because I completely agree with that. And I think when people experience fertility challenges, it's such an amazing opportunity for both people in the relationship to it's a wake-up call. Okay, what's going on under the hood, and how can I optimize myself, not only for the health, for future babies, and of course we want the future babies and we want the healthy babies, but we should also be healthy. We should
Good
be
point.
optimized. So there is no downfall of the partner coming in for acupuncture or the partner taking a prenatal, because there's only upside. He'll feel better. He'll have, more mental clarity, energy for that future baby.
Yeah. Stamina.
It's the foundation you're going to want when you have kids anyway. And your body is very intelligent. If, I, for the longest time in a corporate career of 20 years, was in fight or flight mode, and my adrenals were fatigued, and there was so much going on that you realize if you just start to look inwards about things that you could change, your body can't prioritize conception. For me personally, when I was in fight or flight mode every day. And so it was taking a step back. It was getting into my head to see what I could do to slow down, gratitude, these things that I learned that I wish I had sooner.
Yes. So we're aligned in that, where my egg reserve was going too fast, and I was only 31 years old. And I went to see one of my mentors, Dr. Daoxing Ni, and I was given the diagnosis of early menopause. And he walked into the room and he said, Danica, if your body wants to go to early menopause, it's going to go there. And stressing out over it is going to take you there that much faster. So that was an easy sell, or I integrated that. And then I quickly spun to think, then if I slow down, I could probably slow this process down, to your point. And to the people that are listening, this whole idea of the central nervous system upregulation has never been more real and more prominent than it is now, given all of the coffee houses and technology and those full inboxes that we always talk about, and the different expectations on us as human beings to try to keep up with the technology. So IVF as a technology is a huge win with this ICSI and how we can do this, but it's also to the detriment of men to not know what it is that's wrong with them.
Yeah. And I just want to elaborate. I think why Dr. Turek said that was because you only need one good sperm, right? And I want to say that we are huge also fans of ART. It is allowed same-sex couples, single parents, anyone who wants to have a child. This technology is beautiful. All we're trying to say is there's just a lot you can do before you go there if you choose.
Agreed. Optimizing.
Exactly.
Right? That's where we aligned in our first conversation, that we are optimizing these subfertile scenarios for these people. So your individual stories, let's talk about that. Do you want to talk about stress first, or do you want to talk about seemingly advanced maternal age?
I can chime in on advanced maternal age. Okay. And I also want to go back to your early menopause comment, because I think one thing that a lot of people get very alarmed about is when they get information from their doctor, their OBGYN, their REI, about things like low AMH.
Right. Numbers. They're reduced to numbers.
And I had low AMH. When I was 34, before I met my husband, I had AMH of 0.5.
I love your story so much.
And I thought to myself, okay, well, that's a number. And I'm going to take that number, set it aside. That's information, but I'm not going to think about that number. I'm not going to obsess about that number, because I know, first I thought, well, my mom had my sister when she was 38 years old. So I know genetically, there's a solid foundation. And I also know that I work in wellness, that I eat healthy food, I eat organic food, I take good supplements, I am overall a healthy person. So I thought to myself, okay, well, quantity of eggs versus quality of eggs, right? I want good egg quality. I don't necessarily need so many eggs. And, I had 2 healthy baby girls, and my first one, I had a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby at the age of 38, and my second one at the age of 42, naturally. And so I think there's something to be said about the concept of advanced maternal age and how people think that fertility is so linear and decreases with age.
Mm-hmm.
And age is just one part of the story. It's not everything. And yes, when you age, your mitochondrial function decreases. And there are certain things that obviously are harder as you age, but there's so much that you could do to improve your fertility at any age.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I both have had those
living examples of that.
Living examples.
Mm-hmm. I like to tell the women that they can become more fertile over time. And it is absolutely true for those reasons. Sure, we can go the trajectory like Dr. Dow told me. If you are headed towards menopause, then your body's going to do that. And I did stop menstruating at 44. So that was right. But I used herbs. And at that point, I had 2 toddlers. I wasn't really thinking about holding on to my egg reserve so much. I was in kind of survival mode, but mostly mommy mode. And it was mission accomplished. So I just took care of myself with good food and eating. And at that time, I was in a healthy relationship. And so things were really just flowing. But that's the triad of the mind, body, and the nutrition, and how we think about life and how life is flowing. So, like you said, age is one piece, but how we use wisdom as we age, that does play the biggest role, I think. When we learn how to lower stress, then we come into more ease. And then the universe or whatever can start to inform our cells and the ways that it's going to go. And we can have a quieted mind, and we can envision one genetically normal egg left in that small reserve. That was what I did. Do you remember how you visualized and manifested a good outcome, particularly after the loss?
I think for me, I had a friend that had reached out to me after my loss, and she said, "This isn't the end of your story." And I remember just holding on to that and knowing that it wasn't the end of my story. And I think also when Vida and it was very comforting to go through this with my best friend. Not that I wish anybody to, go through this experience, but having that community to lean on, and then sharing my story and hearing that it is so common, and hearing from other people, okay, they had 2 miscarriages back to back and now they have 3 kids.
Right.
And just knowing and believing that I'll get there too.
Yeah, with that as your mantra, that becomes your certainty, your through line. Like a master plan is in effect. I had the benefit of watching a few thousand women overcome tragic odds, tragic situations, and to reach their healthy kids. So that was something that informed my fertile confidence, for me to be feeling like, well, wait a minute. Not only did they do it, I helped them to do it. So if I use my own advice and I calm down, then I can keep plugging in. It's going to work for me when it's my turn.
Yeah.
So speaking of calming down, Vida, your story is one of more like hypothalamic, potentially. What would you like to say about that? That's kind of how I think of the two of you. Vida has to overcome stress, and she's getting here, and you seem more relaxed than I've ever seen you be.
Yeah.
So something is working.
You're not wrong. This journey, I think, we never envisioned ourselves in the supplement industry, right? We were best friends from the corporate world. And for the first one, I just leaned on her and really went through a very hard time. With the second one, miscarriage, that we had a week apart, I had been down that road. I was just ready to accept that this just happens a lot. And when Ronit kind of went down this research rabbit hole, she obviously was working alongside Dr. Mark Hyman and all these big names in wellness. I'll still remember the day she called me and she's like, did you know men are 50% of miscarriages and pregnancy loss? Men are 50% of, healthy pregnancies. And she was just reciting the research. And we just had this aha moment that it's intuitive, right? It takes two to make a baby. We all know that. But yet no part of our journeys was anyone's putting a spotlight on our husband. Anything they did, ate, drank, and so we basically took these lemons we were handed and made it our life's mission to, one, make the road behind us better for the women after us, two, to make it society a normalization that both partners prep together. They both put their best foot forward. They're both doing all the things. And we say we're shifting the gender paradigms from me to we because it was very focused on women for way too long.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's given me healing through both of the losses and sharing the story. And kind of back to the social comment, once we realized how much people were craving the human stories, and it was like coming off of, 2020, we were all on lockdown and COVID, that everyone was literally in their own heads for way too long and not knowing this stuff is common and happening to other people. And there's things you can do. And there was very little optimism, right, in this space. And so we're just obsessed with sharing as much as humanly possible, any research, any data, anything. And that's been a healing process too. And I tell everyone, like, you don't have to share right away, but when you're ready, you're going to help people, and it's going to help you too if you're able to share your story.
Right. Yeah. Well, I did another episode about family constellations recently, and it is exactly that, how when whichever generation it is where the healing begins, then those generations that, like your parents, your grandparents, you have this healing there, and then it sets the stage for the future generations to have a much better starting point. So from an intuitive psychic level and the nutritional level and the way that we're raising the kids with different tools and different foods, it just stands to reason that it is a trajectory and you're helping to push it along. And as a result, then you're also healing. So it's very cool. I remember a piece of Ronit's story being about the thyroid.
Yeah, well, I have
both of you
hypothyroid, and actually after Vida's first loss, I said to her, this was, gosh, I had Eden, my first, and her first pregnancy ended in loss, and this was 8 years ago.
Yep.
And there were, again, no answers, no resources given. So I said to Vida, check your thyroid. And she checked and had Hashimoto's.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just undetected. And so
back to what we said, just because things are maybe within range or normal doesn't mean they're optimal. And all my blood work was coming up normal,
Fine.
quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
But there was things that I had to go to an endocrinologist. I found out I had Hashimoto's. I got on thyroid medication, and the next, I gave myself, 6 months to heal and get over kind of all the things, and went on to have a healthy baby girl. And so there are some things that are just don't show up in regular lab work. You kind of have to either do your own research and be your own advocate, or have a community of trusted advisors, because I was definitely passed up in many different scenarios and just saying there's nothing I can do.
So that Hashimoto's was revealed after you had your first baby?
Correct.
So
no, after my first miscarriage.
And those came before your first baby?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you were able to correct that part.
Exactly.
But then the before, on the loss that happened in the same week, Hashimoto's was being treated, your thyroid was under control.
Correct.
And then it was male factor, potentially.
We have no idea, but
yeah, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
That was something that was
definitely a thought.
Well, what we both did, and how really we learned this amazing research that men have a gift. Their sperm regenerates every 2 to 3 months, and they can completely transform the quality of their sperm using antioxidants, high dose antioxidants like CoQ10 and NAC and vitamin C and zinc. And so what we did is we put our husbands on essentially all of the nutrients that we learned improve sperm quality. 3 months later, I was pregnant with Emma on my first try at the age of 41. And 6 months later, you were pregnant with Davina. The other thing that I did, I'm a huge proponent of acupuncture. And after my loss, I did acupuncture 3 times a week for 3 months. And, you know, I think people used to think that acupuncture was this like woo-woo thing, but now there's actually science behind the fact that acupuncture promotes ovulation and promotes blood circulation and blood flow and
calming,
mood, and, you know, makes you more present, makes you slow down. So I'm a
balancing hormones.
Huge fan of acupuncture.
Right. We really want to talk about becoming an empowered patient, right? Like these tragic things happened, but then instead of giving up, you knew, well, I want to expand my family and I think I can do this. So you had enough fertile confidence left to be thinking, I'm going to go after this and I'm going to be the empowered individual that thinks outside the box. We're going to try these different things. So I'm thinking of some of my patients, and for them, the safest thing to do is to order a bunch of vitamins. And me being the acupuncturist on the team that practices kind of differently, I want them to do some inner discovery work, some different kinds of grief work, making amends, in healing relationships. That's how I like. The vitamins are there, the research is there, the Google is there, but only they can dig deeper to feel more empowered. But this is where my practice is now, and we're talking about before WeNatal existed, right? So kudos to you both for being so empowered and for pushing this along, and then for using your personal story for other couples.
Thank you.
It's so important to also be your own health advocate when you're navigating any issue, not just fertility, during your pregnancy, if you feel like something's off. And, you know, doctors are well-meaning, but they're busy. So it's very important to speak up for yourself and to do the research. And for us, we couldn't ignore when we found out that men who take antioxidants have 4 times of a higher chance of getting their partner pregnant. We couldn't ignore that information. We had to create a men's prenatal with those nutrients. And so many of the men that take WeNatal now are so grateful because men want to be part of it, but there weren't any tangible tools for them to be part of the fertility journey. And now with WeNatal, it's an easy way for them to participate. And they feel so much better. They reach out to us saying, oh my gosh, I have like this really good libido now that I didn't have before. And we're like, okay, good. That's a good sign of your health. That's what this prenatal is intended on doing.
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking about the seed program. So I talk to the women, I let them know the uterus is a second heart. And I give them some tools for improving their seeds, their eggs, and I do give them the information for men, like here, these are some foods that I know to be high in antioxidants, because before WeNatal, I was giving my patients just like certain brands, male vitamins, mostly antioxidants, not even male vitamins, just antioxidants. But I love metaphors, and those take away the science and make sense of what's happening, and kind of they're just more embraced. But where women become these gardeners, they can optimize the seeds for both partners, but it's the soil, her uterine lining, where that embryo is going to land. So I was able to ascribe meaning to the relationship and how she feels in the partnership, how supported she feels, how healthy the relationship is, and how much she's reminded of the why we're doing it, not just to have a baby because everybody else is having one, but because they feel like they have things they can offer to a child, like things being wisdom, confidence, courage, truth-seeking, these virtues, right? So I like to think that the soil, the lining of the uterus, the receptivity is improved with the relationship, and then the optimization piece that happens with what we're eating, what we're thinking, how we're interacting makes the seeds better.
100%. And we use the term soil all the time in a similar way, but slightly different. When we talk about preconception or trimester 0, or the time before conception, that 3 months, we talk about nourishing your body in order to nourish that soil, because you wouldn't plant a beautiful organic strawberry in just dirt, right?
Right.
You would nourish that soil. You would put in the organic matter. You would take care of it and then plant that seed.
You would prepare it first.
You would prepare it.
And then you would have the faith that it's going to work out, and you would care for it with putting it where it's going to get light, and you would remember to water it.
Exactly. And so for us, we talk about this golden time frame of preconception as the biggest gift you can give to your child, because the time that you invest in your health, both of you and your partner, gives your child that lifelong health. And, we always talk about how before our weddings, we took a year to work out and look the best and fit into that wedding dress. And, but then when it comes to having a baby, a lot of times people are just like, okay, well, I'm ready. Let's have a baby. But where's the prep? You wouldn't just run a marathon, right? You would prepare. And so we're very, very passionate about nourishing that soil and investing in preconception for both men and women, because, from the most basic level, men can improve their sperm quality and women can improve their egg quality. And that's science.
Yeah. I want to share a little bit of my personal story. So I had been trying for I wasn't trying for 6 years, but I had been improving my egg parameters and bringing my FSH down from 21 to 8 and keeping it there. When I got the call from who's now the kid's dad, Dan, when he reached out and he said, "Did you start a family?" And I said, "No, it hasn't worked out how I was hoping." We had a few weeks to talk about it and to talk it through, and to be very much in the conversation of, if this works out how it seems sort of fated, what are we going to do? Because we're not romantically involved. We're not in a relationship, but I trusted him. I knew how much he cared for his daughter from his marriage before, and I knew him to be a good dad. And so I trusted him. And that might have been enough for me to let the guard down, because we didn't have 6 months of preconception care. He's 7 years older than me, so he would be advanced paternal age. He likes traditional food. He's a caveman, grill master, masculine man, but he doesn't take vitamins, and he didn't then, and he's, he was not like the healthiest guy by any stretch. But I think our combined intentions as part of this preconception conversation, it is sort of a spiritual contract. We're setting the stage for better families going forward. And we do that by doing our healing generational trauma work and eating better and all of it. It almost sounds like a recording, but it's not. It's so nuanced and different for everybody and every couple. They have their different things to work through as individuals and as a couple.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the reasons WeNatal's one of the only brand that has a mental aspect component too. We've curated a beautiful journal And I love what you said about the intention the couples are putting towards that future family or the future child. And there's some really amazing prompts and questions and things you can do with your partner to discuss, like you mentioned, why do you even want a family? What does it look like? Who's going to help you? The things that, again, tools that we wish we had. It's also going to get your mind in the right space to welcome this new baby and get back to a couple minute a day practice of gratitude, which can also change the structure of your body. So it's something we're very passionate about, and that's why we've combined the best possible formula for him and her in addition to the journal.
And then the fish oil came out at just the right time with so many miscarriages in the post-COVID time frame and seeing so much inflammation. I was so relieved. WeNatal is my favorite fish oil to recommend because they're tiny pills. They don't burp and taste like fish. The container is pretty. The concentration is good. I know that the quality is good. The QC, the purity.
Well, the quality is a big one for fish oil because, you know, when you're pregnant, you want to avoid mercury and you want to avoid toxins. And our fish oil is third-party tested, and we share our third-party testing documents with whoever asks, and it has 0 mercury. And that's the amazing. Reason why it's burp-free is because it's completely pure. So you know that if you're burping up your fish oil, that means that it's rancid and the quality is subpar.
Right. And then they put the lemon in there so that you don't smell how rancid it is.
It's even worse.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. So as we're in the vitamins and the nutrients, the folate that's in there is methylated. Some people listening might not know what that means. Can you explain?
Yeah. So one thing that's super important when it comes to supplements and prenatal supplements in general is making sure that all the ingredients are bioavailable. So bioavailable means that anybody can absorb them no matter what their genetics look like. Now, the issue with, there's this debate, folic acid, folate. Folic acid is the synthetic form of folate. We know that it's important to take folic acid because it prevents neural tube defects. But the problem is with taking the synthetic form, 40% of the people have a genetic mutation called MTHFR, and they cannot utilize that folic acid. And so what we did with our prenatal is we made our folic acid bioavailable, and it's the natural form of folate that you don't need to convert in order to absorb. So it's folate or methylfolate or 5-MTHF. That's what you should be looking for on your label. And it's not just folate, it's all of our B vitamins are methylated, which means essentially bioavailable.
Right. That your body's going to know what to do with it. And that mutation is going to be addressed and assisted by the form that it's being presented.
Yes.
Because without that ability to methylate the B vitamins, a big part of the energy that goes into the magic of conception and then being able to grow the embryo is hindered.
Yeah.
It took, I can't tell you how many early losses I watched from people having that MTHFR gene mutation not discovered yet. And then it was Full Guard came on the scene and the women started taking that, and suddenly a big percentage of the early miscarriages stopped.
There's a study from 2018 that took couples that both had MTHFR. It was 30 couples, and 30 of those couples had infertility for 4 years. They put each of the partners on 800.
Pause.
There was a 2018 study where 30 couples that both had the MTHFR genetic mutation and had 4 years of infertility were given 800 milligrams of folate, and 13 of those couples got pregnant naturally within 3 months. Wow. And so when we say nutrients are medicine, food is medicine, we not only believe it, there's just so much science to back it.
It's not a hypey tagline. It's for real. And food as fertile medicine in particular, there are certain foods that inform our hormones, that lower inflammation, seeds that look like a sperm and eggs like a fig, like these different things that we have that we take for granted, or we assume, well, it can't be that easy. It has to be IVF and technology and $40,000. Not true.
Yeah.
At least not across the board.
Not across the board.
And I'm not diminishing when it's got to that point. But when I talked to author Han Oh, she said something really courageous. She said, because she's written now 3 cookbooks and she's all about nutrition, and her ancestors taught her how to cook and how to eat. And it's in her DNA, of course, to be food as medicine, and foods are herbs. Herbs are food and herbs are healing. But she said, I don't want to apologize that it happened easily for me. And I don't want to judge you that it happened, Danica, that it was hard. But my upbringing was processed foods, a single mom. I knew how to cook a box of macaroni and cheese, right? So, I mean, that's sort of part of my story. But Chinese medicine school taught me how to use foods better. And luckily I was only 26. So it is this really interesting thing that what we put in is what we get out. So if you're somebody who's been a healthy eater all these years, but you're still struggling with infertility or subfertility, then it kind of begs the question, what's your mindset? What's your mindfulness? What's your belief about what's going to happen? What's your backstory? Where can you do some shifting there? And like the journal and looking at what's not working, and then where you can take some power back, right?
And by the way, stressors can be also environmental stressors, right? We have so many stressors in our environment that are constantly kind of creating stress on the body, whether it's BPAs and phthalates and PFAS. And these are chemicals that are in plastics and nonstick pans. So we also talk about, focusing on your body, focusing on your mind, but also focusing on your home and your environment, because that's also setting up a home that you would want to welcome a beautiful baby into, and making sure that it's toxin free. And so I think that's a big one too.
And applying kind of a 80-20 mindset to that, right? Because so many of my patients have gone commando in their kitchen and everything is glass. They don't have any more plastic anymore, but then they leave their house. And so that creates sort of a neuroses. We have to have this 80-20.
Yes.
We have to believe that life is still lifing.
100%. You still need to enjoy life, go out, have fun, eat, again, that goes back to filling your cup, right? If you're going to be so scared and just eat in your house and only eat organic, and that
can be very limiting.
Very limiting.
Right. And we're also up against evolution where shoes and clothes are made of plastic. And how are we going to get away from it? So sometimes I go sci-fi and I think, oh, we're ingesting microplastics because the future generation might have more of a AI chip sort of thing, and they need plastic because it's not going to be as vulnerable as human skin. I know it sounds kind of funny, but things just keep shifting so quickly.
Right.
And it helps me calm anxiety, because otherwise I'm such an empath. I feel so sad that we have plastics bombarding us and technology and things. But if I think, oh, I guess the human body is going to integrate it and we will have some hybridization and we'll make peace with it instead of letting it inflame our systems. That's another narrative. It's my narrative. It takes my narratives a while to gain popularity, but that doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah.
And it sure could help reduce the panic.
Yeah.
I love that. Because ultimately, if you're so freaked out all the time, that's another form of fight or flight mode, right? And it's like stress is never going to leave our life. You just have to find the joy within it and the ways to combat it, whether it's exercise or things that bring you joy. And I don't think we talk about that enough in the conception journey either.
That's what I'm making Baby Makers to be about. Not to make it how hard it is and the specifics of all the things we need to do, but to be thinking, hey, our evolution is happening and it's seemingly harder to conceive, or we need technology. We have to allow that to happen so that we can flow with it. For example, like women who work in the ER, they're exposed to adrenaline and cortisol all day long. Like I'm in here and I'm listening to trance music, and that's my thing. But they are like code red patients dying and stuff, and they're running and the crash carts. And they conceive no problem because they trained their systems to be able to know how to shift part of their brain into, okay, now we're over in here and we're going to operate at an optimal capacity. So then that makes them feel more fertile confidence, right? Because they feel empowered. They feel powerful on some level.
Yeah.
Cortisol shows up in various different ways. You two addressed it in the both partners' vitamins. How did you do that? Is that the antioxidants component for oxidative stress?
Yep. We have antioxidants in both formulas, which obviously work to support oxidative stress and slow down kind of the aging of the cells that come from the environment and just stress and diet. So definitely both formulas. The men's formula specifically is like the foundation is antioxidants plus B vitamins because
support his adrenals.
And then just general overall health, right? With it being focused on enhancing sperm quality, motility, reducing DNA damage, and then also just supporting overall health, which is so important.
Right.
And then on the women's side of things, we have antioxidants, and then we have some key nutrients that are very specific to pre, during, and postpartum. There are some brands that are popping up with prenatals that you have to change every trimester and they overcomplicate things. WeNatal has one formula because it's already a stressful time. So we want to make sure that people know that they're covered no matter what trimester they're in. But we have key nutrients for fertility in the right dosages, because that's the other thing that's super important to know is that not all prenatals are created equally. And we never in a million years, as Vida said, thought that we'd be in this prenatal supplement business. Once we learned about the men's component, we couldn't ignore that. And we were going to create a prenatal for men. And then when we learned about the women's prenatal space, there's so much competition. It seems as if there's no need for another women's prenatal. But we just found that the women's prenatals were the ones that were very popular were not comprehensive. So WeNatal has 24 key nutrients for fertility, and every single one of those nutrients are important. So if you look at your nutrition label and you don't have at least 24 nutrients, you're taking the wrong prenatal. So that's number one. The second thing is dosages, because dosages matter. We actually formulated our prenatal with an amazing team of doctors, nutritionists, as Vida mentioned, but then reformulated 6 months after launching because a new study came out that was a meta-analysis of 200 studies looking at nutrients and fertility. And we shifted our formula slightly based off of that study. And our commitment to our consumer is that we will always evolve with silence. Our formula is not set in stone because science is always evolving and we're always learning. So it's very important to know that, one nutrient that we were talking about, for instance, is choline.
Choline.
Choline is crucial for baby brain development. And so many prenatals completely leave out choline or have dosages that are super low, like 50 milligrams. Research shows that women who are pregnant need 450 milligrams and women who are lactating need 550 milligrams. And yet the prenatals on the shelf, a lot of good quality prenatals have 50 milligrams of choline. WeNatal has 400 milligrams because we know that the average American is taking in from diet 180. So we want to make sure that they're covered with 400 milligrams. And that's super crucial.
That was brilliant and so helpful. Yeah, because they can get some choline from eggs, liver.
But we have you covered. If you don't eat as many eggs, if you're vegan, of course, like maybe supplement with a little bit more choline. But what we did with WeNatal is we wanted to take all the nutrients and also make it easy for you to take it, because our formula has 3 capsules. Comparable formulas on the market has 8 capsules per serving. How can you expect
when you're already nauseated and you have to take handfuls, and the capsules themselves could be just a gag reflex trigger?
Exactly.
What I love about it is the packaging. I know it costs you more as the manufacturer, but for those patients, when I tell them, please just use WeNatal, it saves them money, because it saves the customer money, because they don't have to supplement with other things. It's all in there.
100%. We were taking, before WeNatal, we were taking our prenatal, we were adding folate, we were adding choline, we were adding iron. We were adding vitamin D. Vitamin D is another one about dosage. A lot of prenatals on the market just don't have enough, and the amount that's required for pregnancy is 4,000 IUs. And low vitamin D is associated with so many issues with pregnancy, but also fertility. So that was a big one too. So making it easy, 3 capsules a day. And listen, yes, the packaging is expensive. The nutrients are expensive, but we're not going to sacrifice our prenatal to make it cheap so that we have better margins.
Right. Because what's more important is your outstanding commitment, and that the people can feel and they can see, and you're getting so much information, and the people can connect with you,
Yeah, they definitely connect. We respond to every single DM, comment, email, and we love being there for our community.
It seems very authentic. The fish oil came out. Are you working on something else? I don't want to release any secrets, but
yeah, we're working on one additional thing this year and have a few ideas for next year. But the truth is our biggest commitment this year is education.
Great.
We have seen that there is such a thirst for information from the community, which is why you're starting this podcast, which is why we've been doing ongoing workshops, and we're having thousands of people sign up, because people need trusted information. They need trusted resources. And this year we made it a commitment to just constantly put out information, blogs, workshops. We are very fortunate to be surrounded by incredible practitioners and doctors, and we want to bring the information that we've learned to the forefront.
Great, because really what you created is such a good core with the prenatal and the fish oil that it doesn't need an extra thing. And the fact that you're not chasing another thing or launching another thing just kind of says, we really believe we've done enough of the research and we've created a solid product that it can just stand on its own. And I do love when my patients, if I don't see their husbands, but the wives come in and tell me that either his DNA fragmentation index has gone down or his sperm count has gone up, his morphology is improved. is motility as well. You know, the proof is in the lab results.
Yep. We've had the same testimonials written in multiple times, and it's just touching because they literally said those exact words. Proof is in the labs, and women are sharing that literally some of their husbands' parameters doubled, tripled, and we're just overjoyed. And some of our customers have shared very personal, vulnerable stories about not being able to conceive forever and then finding functional medicine, finding WeNatal, and it happening. So any way we can help, whether it's education, supplements, the journal, we stand behind each item with integrity. And it's something we will always do.
For sure. I love that about you guys. So I think my final question, because I want to have this episode air in the days leading up to Father's Day, right? Can you speak on how was it for your husbands, for you guys as their wives to be like, hey, we're working on male factor? And what would you like to say to the future fathers that are listening and their wives that are listening? What's some guidance or heartfelt insight about what you've learned for the spirit of the father?
I think the funny one is that my husband always jokes that we created WeNatal because our husbands were mess ups a little bit in the fertility journey. And I say that to laugh. But the truth is both of our husbands were absolute champs. When Ronit uncovered the research about she had them on, I don't know, 10 or 12 capsules a day.
Because I had to concoct the formula
WeNatal
with
separately.
Other vitamins, right? So they were taking 12 handfuls.
And they hate to take anything, really. Like they'll take
my husband wouldn't take anything until this. And I think that once the research was there, and I think for all the women out there, it's so much harder to feel like you're forcing someone who maybe doesn't like it or changing their path. But the reality is if you can show them the research, if you could show them that it's maybe even if they really don't like taking supplements, it's not forever. It's just about laying a great foundation for the future health of our children and their lifelong health. And also there's some generations that think, I don't need supplements. I eat super healthy. I eat organic. I eat healthy. I don't need supplements. That used to be true in maybe our grandparents' generation, but our minerals and our soils are depleted, and therefore even eating super clean, you do need supplementation to kind of meet that nutritional gap.
Well, I think eating super clean, what does that really mean?
Exactly.
Even so there are so many different diets that everybody's on. And if they go to one of these exclusive diets, keto, for example, or something, then they're eliminating other. Yeah,
it's nearly, I would say, impossible to probably get everything you need with every meal. And so it's just a little insurance policy, if you will. And it's about creating better and healthier habits and also when you have the baby, you are more depleted maybe after, right? And you are not sleeping, and there's a whole lot of other levels of factors. And so both WeNatal for her and him could be an amazing multi for mom and dad as they go into the baby years.
Right.
And I would just say, my husband is just super supportive and loves taking WeNatal, even though we're not trying to conceive anymore. He has days where he's like, oh, I'm feeling a little off. Oh my gosh, I forgot to take my WeNatal. That's why. But they're very proud husbands and proud dads. And I always say that the men that are our WeNatal men, the men that are on board, that take the prenatal, that do the nutrition consults, because we give free nutrition consults with all of our community.
Oh my gosh.
The men that show up, they're going to be the best dads, because these are men that are co-parenting from day zero. And we just love to see it. And we love to see the next generation of fathers. And it's amazing.